How does a piece of music, without any description, manage to raise more descriptive explanation than any other work, ranging from catacombs to political revolution? What's the glue holding the entire Beethoven 7 Symphony together? And what's one of the biggest issues that arise when interpreting this piece? All of this and more coming right up on Conducting Pills. Hi, I'm Gianmaria Griglio, I'm a conductor and a composer, and welcome to this episode of Conducting Pills, a series where we take a repertoire piece or a part of it and we analyze it from a conductor's point of view. This episode focuses on the first movement of Beethoven 7 Symphony, its structure, its phrasing, and of course we'll have some technical tips. As usual, you can jump through different sections of the video by clicking on the links present in the description below. Now, let's begin! Written between 1811 and 1812, the seventh is the only Beethoven symphonies that aroused throughout the centuries the greatest variety of explanations. Beethoven himself did not give any indication, as he did for instance with his first symphony, the Eroica, or his sixth symphony, the Pastoral Symphony. The most popular description was given by Wagner, who in a conversation with Listz described it as the apotheosis of the dance. But many others tried to define what the seventh is about. Joseph d'Arthez called it in 1863 a procession in an old cathedral or catacomb. For Adolf Bernhard Marx in 1859, it was a tale of a Moorish knighthood. And Dr. Karl Eken, an editor of the Bremer Zeitung and a contemporary of Beethoven, read it as a depiction of a political revolution. The sign of revolt is given. There is a rushing and running about the multitude. An innocent man or party is surrounded, overpowered after a struggle and healed before a legal tribunal. Innocency weeps. The judge pronounces a harsh sentence. Sympathetic voices mingle in laments and denunciations. The magistrates are now scarcely able to quiet the wild tumult. The uprising is suppressed, but the people are not quieted. Hope smiles cheeringly, and suddenly the voice of the people pronounces the decision in harmonious agreement. Now, while some of these ideas might sound colorful, they do accentuate how different the interpretation of this symphony might be. The seventh premiered in Vienna in 1813, with Beethoven himself conducting. The occasion was a charity concert for the soldiers wounded in the Battle of Hanau, a battle fought between the Austro-Bavarian Corps and a retreating Napoleon. Beethoven conducted it, but apparently with great difficulty, as he could only hear the loudest passages. Louis Spohr called his leadership uncertain and often ridiculous. The program also included the Wellington's victory, exalting the victory of the British over Napoleon's France. But more than a concert, it seems to have been a gala with some of the finest musicians of the time present. Spohr, Hummel, Meyerbeer and Antonio Salieri were all there. The seventh was very well received, and the audience demanded the allegretto to be encored immediately. Incidentally, the allegretto was the first movement to be drafted of this symphony as early as 1806. After its premiere, the seventh was repeated 3 times in the following 10 weeks, and the applause rose to the point of ecstasy during one of the performances. What holds together all 4 movements of the symphony is the rhythm. All of them are born out of an ostinato, a small rhythmic cell continuously repeated, propelling its energy throughout the entire movement. Everything else either sits on top or spurges directly from it. The other very interesting thing about this symphony is that the woodwinds acquire ever more importance, to the point where Beethoven changes the order in which they are in the manuscript. Up until then, the violins used to be at the very top of the sheet music in virtue of the fact that they were playing the most important part, the melody. Starting with the seventh, Beethoven writes the winds at the top and the strings at the bottom, which is the order in which we still have the scores printed today. To realize the increasing importance of the woodwinds, it is sufficient to listen to the opening of the Poco animato. A full orchestra chord, and then nothing. Just an oboe with a very simple lyrical line on an arpeggio. What are we going to listen to? What do we expect? Something soothing, perhaps, given the gentleness of the woodwind's line. It's a decoy. It should be clear right from the first chord, ranging from the low A1 all the way up, that we're in for something special. Just so we don't miss the point, Beethoven reiterates the strong chords a total of 4 times, falling back every time to a more reassuring gesture, but adding every time a different wind instrument to the mix. It's a brilliant way to thicken the texture and widen the spectrum. The strings are in the background, waiting patiently. What Beethoven does is introducing us slowly to the rhythmical feast that is about to begin. The violins tentatively give us the rhythmic element of this slow introduction, a scale in 16 notes. It's just one bar, it's a question answered by the winds. The question is repeated, and with a big crescendo we land on a tutti. The first motivic cell we heard from the winds is now juxtaposed to the rhythmic material. Only now it's bouncing between the first and second violins, and its character is completely different. Each note has a sforzato marking in fortissimo. Beethoven is asking the players to go beyond the loudest dynamic that they had at the time. And we move to a new theme, suspended in the air, introduced once again by the woodwinds. And then repeated by the strings. Notice the rhythmical accompaniment of the oboe and the bassoon here, shortly joined by the flute. It's a parenthesis in C major. It's a key that is very foreign to the home key of A major. But it's not enough for Beethoven. He needs to repeat everything once more. From the last episode in F major, the introduction transitions to the vivace through more than 60 repetitions of the note E, one single note. The rhythm that propels the entire allegro is broken down into pieces, deconstructed, and then put back together. The vivace is in sonata form. The sonata form is a structure typical of the classicism, which usually includes an exposition with 2 contrasting themes, a development section where the themes of the musical material get tossed around and reworked, and the recapitulation. And everything is often framed by a slow introduction and the coda. This movement is dominated by the lively, dance-like dotted rhythms. And on top of that, it has the usual Beethoven fingerprints, such as the sudden changes in dynamics and the abrupt modulations. And guess who's presenting the first theme in the vivace? The woodwinds, of course. There's a bit of a dialogue with the strings, and then the theme is played in full orchestra. It's a carbon copy of the structure used in the introduction. When you get to the hold on bar 88, do not close the hold and then wait to restart, or you'll create an unwanted silence where Beethoven does not want one. Simply hold the sound, and while you're closing it, give a clear upbeat for the scale to begin. While we move on, the rhythmical element is omnipresent. And look at what pops back up in the second violins and viola. It's the scales we heard in the introduction. Here, they're reversed. And then we stop. In which key? In C major, the same key of that weird first suspension that we heard in the introduction. It's another parenthesis before a crescendo takes us to the end of the exposition. The development section opens again in C major with 2 elements, the dotted rhythm and the scales. The scales crisscross each other, beginning in each section 2 measures apart. And look at this, it's the arpeggio that we heard in the very first 2 bars. It's now mixed with the dotted rhythmic cell, while the 16 notes of the scale are reduced to an obsessive repetition of one single note. Now this technical tip is something that mostly depends on the acoustic of the hall, but it comes in handy most of the time. Wait a split of a second before the downbeat of bar 220. We're coming from quite a long section of fortissimo and sforzandi, and there's a good chance of the sound carrying on with the reverb of the hall. If you wait that fraction of a second, you'll be able to hear much more clearly the harmonic change in piano without the overtones overlapping weirdly. The ride continues, exploding in a fortissimo where the only important element is the one supporting the entire movement, the rhythmic one. And the same element takes us back in the recapitulation. By the way, notice the scales in the strings. Besides being in 16 and ascending, therefore connecting with the introduction, they also share the same exact rhythm of quadruplets and triplets we heard on bar 88. The recapitulation proceeds with a few orchestration changes, like the added timpani in this passage, for example. Or the change in the horns here. The movement finishes with a long coda, which starts similarly to the development section. We're suspended, sort of wondering where we are and where we're going for a few bars. Then a pedal of E spanning 4 octaves sets up the final crescendo. And notice this 2-bar motive which is repeated 10 times. The rhythmic cell comes back. The horns pop up gloriously. And the movement comes to an end. One of the biggest performance issues that arise when interpreting this piece, along with other Beethoven's works of course, is the issue of tempo. Beethoven at first thought of metronome as silly stuff, insisting that one must feel the tempo. But by 1818 he had changed his mind and had started to consider the metronome as indispensable. Ultimately, he arrived at a compromise explaining that the numerical tempo must be observed only for the first few measures, because, and I quote, "feeling also has its tempo and cannot be expressed in this figure." Besides, it's known that Beethoven owned 2 different metronomes with inconsistent markings, and the scholars disagree on which one was the correct one. From a conductor point of view, the metronome marking is a good indication, but ultimately that's all it is. What really counts is the feeling of it and the passion we can convey through this thrilling music. And as Beethoven put it, playing a wrong note is meaningless, but playing without passion is inexcusable. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below the video and ring the bell so that you will get notified every time a new video comes out. And let me know in the comments what you think about this piece and if you have any suggestions for future videos. And I will see you next week when we'll go through the death of Andrei from Janacek's Taras Bulba. Till then, bye bye.